Hey, what's going on, Ram fans? This was going to be my Super Bowl reaction video with a bunch of Rams news and notes thrown in. It's going to be mostly the latter, this Super Bowl. I'm pushing this, publishing this before the game's even over. Um, Kind of a horrific game, man. The Eagles are really impressive. And the downside to this is, you know what? I think the Super Bowl was a few weeks ago in Philadelphia when the Rams and Eagles squared up. And the Rams are clearly right now the second best team in the NFL, if not the best. They lost in Philadelphia in bad weather. And if that game is in a neutral site or at SoFi, who knows what would have happened. Rams were actually potentially, possibly, you could argue the better team in that game. But man, this Super Bowl, the Eagles just dominating it. The Chiefs just did not look like themselves, completely out of sorts. I did not wait for the end of this game. I didn't want to. I wanted to move on and get on with my life. Some other things going on here. 34-6 is when I dropped off. Barely watched the game really, but what I did see, pretty impressive. Now, hopefully, the Eagles will have a Super Bowl hangover and open the door for the Rams because right now, my power rankings, who you got as the second best team in the National Football League? It's got to be the Rams. Now, obviously, roster's already changing, but there's going to be some changes on all these teams. But the end of the 2024 season, my power rankings, Eagles 1, the Los Angeles Rams 2. Oh boy, what could have been. Hey, before we kick off the rest of this will be episode 659 on the podcast. I'm going to talk about a player who wore number 59, linebacker Micah Kiser, 6 feet, 244 pounds, out of the University of Virginia, fifth round pick in 2018. And I always felt that Kiser would have been ideal in the 1970s as an inside linebacker, kind of an old school guy, not flashy, but a pretty good run stopping linebacker. And he had that knee injury in 2020 on Monday Night Football. If I remember correctly, it was friendly fire, and he never really bounced back from that, had some more injuries, eventually signed by the Broncos off the Rams practice squad, had high hopes for him. Again, probably a better linebacker in the 1970s, 1980s than in the modern era where coverage is much more important, but solid run stopping linebacker. Micah Kiser, our number 59 for the Los Angeles Rams. And hey, a talking point here, we've been deliberating the exit of Cooper Kupp and his trade value, what the Rams might get back for him. And I tuned into Colin Cowherd's podcast, and he had John Middlecoff on, and he was pretty blunt. Middlecoff was saying, no one is trading anything of value for a 31-year-old who is making $20 million. These guys get released. And he's pretty adamant that Rams aren't going to get anything for Cooper Kupp. Just doesn't make any sense because most of these teams know he's eventually going to get released. And Middlecoff actually saying that there were teams that wanted to make a trade for him, after that 1-4 start by the Rams, and the Rams just didn't like the deals, and now they may be kind of stuck. It's not the end of the world. How much are you going to get back from him for him anyways in a trade? Not much. And, teams are just going to let him wait for the Rams to release him and sign him to a, $5 million deal a year, something like that. So I think Middlecoff has a point. Makes sense if you listen to him. Makes 100% sense that the Rams are probably going to end up releasing Cooper Kupp. Hey, I'm going to do a mock draft roundup here. Some other folks on the World Wide Web sharing their mock draft thoughts. Cynthia Freeland, NFL.com, had the Rams drafting Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. He's the guy that got banged up, did not finish the year due to injury, but he's a solid prospect, could be a future left tackle. I'm not convinced the Rams are going to go that direction, especially, well, obviously, if they re sign Alaric Jackson, they will not go that direction with the 26th pick in the draft. But, given what we know right now, it's an understandable mock draft. Have the Rams drafting a future left tackle. Pro Football Focus had the Rams drafting, now I'm going to struggle with this name, Alec Ayamaner. Probably butchered that really bad. And this guy, I totally missed on him. Haven't really looked into him at all. He's a wide receiver out of Stanford, a Canadian that played football for the Stanford Cardinal. And man, you gotta like what they're saying about him. He's a intense, angry wide receiver, does everything with 100% intent, blocking, route running, fighting for the ball, fighting for the catch. And yeah, I kind of like this guy, and it makes sense. I'm not sure if that's what, if you listen to Sean McVay talking about diversifying this offense, maybe they go a different direction. But, what the Rams have been doing with the wide receiver position over the last few years, this wide receiver out of Stanford makes 100% sense. And, wide receiver to me makes more sense than tackle. But hey, it all depends on Alaric Jackson. Now, Walter Football had the Rams drafting Omar Norman Lott, the defensive tackle out of Tennessee, played 3 years at Arizona State, 2 years at Tennessee. So he's one of the older prospects in the draft, already 23 years old. And I'm not really digging this pick. And, Lott at 315 pounds, my first thought is, okay, we're getting our run stopping defensive tackle, but that's not really his forte. He's actually a little more adept at, creating a pass rush, some pressure up the middle on the quarterback, which is not a bad thing. But I don't think the Rams are spending a first round pick on a defensive tackle. I'll probably mock it that way a couple of times just to see how it works out. And that's what you have to know about my mock drafts. I'm not necessarily arguing for a particular pick or a particular strategy. I'm going to end up doing 25 mock drafts probably with other folks helping me out. And we're just experimenting. It's a science project to see which ones we like, which ones turn out best for the Rams. But Omar Norman Lott with the 26 overall pick, I'm not feeling that, although no knock on him. He seems like more of a, maybe similar to Kobe Turner, obviously a little bit bigger, but brings the same skill set from what I see. And Vinny Iyer of the Sporting News had the Rams drafting another name I'm going to butcher here, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota, Ariante Ursary, and he is definitely a left tackle prospect, a starting left tackle prospect in the NFL, but a little early for him, I think. But he'll probably be a pretty good football player eventually. More of a, going to take some time for him to be able to, you're going to trust him as your left tackle on day one? Probably not. And I don't think the Rams are going to draft a left tackle in the first round unless it's someone they really feel can step in and get that job done. I mean, again, assuming Alaric Jackson has moved on. If Alaric Jackson is not moving on, the Rams won't draft a left tackle or a tackle at all. Probably, I'm thinking fourth or sixth round. Coaching news, the Rams have hired Scott Huff as their new tight ends coach. He was the Seahawks offensive line coach last year, formerly with the University of Washington Huskies. Now, he's got a background offensive line, obviously. And the thought here is, and I don't necessarily agree with this, is that they're bringing him on to, coach up the Rams tight ends. He's their new tight ends coach with an offensive line background. I'm not really buying that. I mean, obviously, that'll be a focus is their blocking skills, but that seems kind of odd to me. That would be the reason for the hire. Again, if the Rams are really going to diversify their offense, unless they're talking going 12 personnel a lot more here, then that would make sense bringing Scott Huff on board for that particular reason, but only time will tell. Hey, I meant to share this a while back. Pro Football Focus threw out their top 10 undrafted free agents who performed the best over the course of this past season, and two Rams made the top 10. You had Thomas Harper of the Raiders and Del Pettis of the Patriots, two safeties. This is in order 1 through 10. Number 3 was wide receiver Jalen Coker of the Panthers. 4, edge rusher DeAndre Tillman of the Broncos. And then 5, linebacker Joe Andreessen of the Bills. And then coming in at number 6, linebacker Omar Speights. And they were kind of said it pretty bluntly that Speights could be the best of this group and just add it to a spectacular Rams rookie draft class. Omar Speights on top of that, pretty good deal. Then you had 2 Jets, edge rusher Eric Watts and defensive lineman Leonard Taylor. Number 9, cornerback Roland Wallace of the Chiefs. Left out his first name. I think it's Christian Roland Wallace. And then number 10, safety Jalen McCullough of the Rams, a guy that early on was a great special teams player, had a handful of interceptions. Jalen McCullough coming in at number 10. So yeah, Rams, if you look at this, the Rams apparently doing a really good job drafting and targeting undrafted free agents as well and bringing in guys that can really help. And shout out to Les Snead for the work they did getting these guys in. And it made sense for Speights to want to come on board with the Rams because they obviously had a deficiency there at inside linebacker, and Speights took advantage of it, especially after Troy Reeder had that injury. Hey, I'm going to go off off the beaten path here and talk about some other LA teams. It's that time of year, and we're going to touch on the Dodgers, Lakers, and UCLA Bruins real quick. A quote from Miguel Rojas, the Dodgers infielder. This year, if everybody's healthy, you'll win 120 games. I know it's a lot, but with that roster, you're supposed to go out there and win it. And I have highlighted here on the YouTube channel for you, those listening, potential Dodger pitching rotation, and it's just silly. Now, Clayton Kershaw, not necessarily in the picture yet, but he could be their 8th or 9th pitcher. Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, Roki Sasaki, and then Kershaw. And hey, how about Shohei Ohtani? This is just insane. I mean, it used to be a struggle to get, if you had 3 quality starters, you were in pretty good shape. The Dodgers could be pushing 9. There's another guy, Landon Knack, that could eventually be in this rotation as well. I don't know what they're going to do with all these guys, to be honest with you, because I don't think you want to go 2 weeks without pitching. And yeah, I assume some of these guys are going to end up being long relievers. And what is Kershaw still playing for? Love the guy, but at some point, check out, start enjoying life. And I want to talk about Mick Cronin. A while back, he had that meltdown in his press conference calling out his players as delusional, saying that Mick Cronin, is the hardest working person on this team. He steps out on the court and he's immediately the hardest working guy associated with the UCLA basketball team, players and assistant coaches included. Now, after that meltdown, they lost a couple, and then since then, winners of 7 straight, including 3 ranked teams, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Michigan State. They are on a roll. Expect them to creep back into the rankings here the next time they come out. 5-1 against ranked teams. They had a win against Gonzaga too, remember? So, man, things looking up. At the time, I thought it was kind of a bad look for Mick Cronin, but hey, maybe it worked because they seem to be pointed. The arrow is pointing up for UCLA Hoops, and he's a great coach. Now, I watched a little bit of that game the other day against Penn State. Penn State outmanned, has some guys hurt. But man, talk about the defense and takeaways, the turnover margin UCLA has been experiencing over this run. is just incredible. And yeah, they're going to be a force in the tournament if they can keep this up. Get maybe a 4 seed out of it. We'll have to see. But good time to be a Bruins fan. It was looking pretty bad just like a month ago. And lastly, the Lakers, touch on that real quickly. Monday night, Luka and LeBron together. Now, the problem is, Austin Reeves, by the way, the other night had 45 points, so he's the guy we tend to forget about. He's playing really well. But the Mark Williams trade is no more. He did not pass his physical. And that's a problem for the Lakers because he answered all their problems. A big guy in the middle, great defender, just working with a guy like Luka and LeBron, their passing skills. And so now they're going to have to go back to Jackson Hayes or some other guys that they may be able to reel in the NBA, how the way the NBA works. The trading deadline's over, but there are some guys they could pull from other rosters. But it's going to be Jackson Hayes probably for now in the middle, and that's a little scary. Really puts, if it was a healthy Mark Williams, Lakers could make a serious run here in the West and get to the championship without him. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's going to be a tough road, but on the upside, Luka, he's a young guy. We're thinking long term, Lakers could be in pretty good shape. And we also get Dalton Knecht back, the rookie sharpshooter. He was part of that trade to Charlotte. So he is back in Lakers camp. And I know a couple of writers are saying, well, how awkward is that going to be coming back to the team that just traded you? I don't think that's a big deal. These guys are professionals. They'll be fine. So, hey, before we check out here, we have our live stream Wednesday night. Please join us, and I'll have a mock draft in the next day or two, another mock draft to share out here from Rams Up